Welcome to the Depth Perception Podcast.
We go in depth about the perceptions and misconceptions of optometry,
which includes the business of optometry,
social issues within optometry,
and life as an optometry student.
Coming straight from Dr. Jasdeep Singh Soni,
Dr. Nadia Afghami,
Dr. Douglas Akiti,
and Svetlana Nunez. We hope you enjoy this episode.
Anyway, I was at the dinner last night.
The dinner.
The Vision Source dinner. Minding my own business, drinking my wine. And the doctor in front of me goes, "You look really familiar." And I'm like, "Oh." And he was like, "Are you on YouTube?" And I said, "No, I'm not on YouTube. I have an Instagram." And he goes, "No, I've seen you on YouTube. I was looking up a boards thing because I had to retake boards for Florida, and you and like 3 other people were on YouTube talking about boards." And I said, "Wow, that's crazy. I do have a podcast."
Yes, you are on YouTube. Correction, you are on YouTube.
So.
And Spotify, and Google Podcasts, and Apple Podcasts, to say the least.
Double tap that.
Like and subscribe.
Hit it and quit it.
So just so you guys know, we're famous, recognizably. So.
I didn't even know it. You know it.
GD, you know what? Let's take a second. How are you today?
I'm great.
You're in such a good mood. What is it that has lifted your spirits so?
Today's my Thursday.
Today's Wednesday, so.
As in, tomorrow's my Friday. So I'm feeling good.
Which means he's off in 2 days.
Okay. Was it the samples today that were like top notch, or
I did
what?
have some good samples today. You know, I take my girls out once a week to have samples as a bonding tool, and we had some good samples. We had some good pasta and some good tortilla chips and some good chicken.
I have a question.
Yeah, go for it.
Do you describe Nadia and I as your girls too?
Wow.
Probably.
Really, I feel like we should ask these questions. This is
What's wrong? Is there something wrong with that? First, let's start there.
I mean, if you didn't hear Madi, there definitely is something wrong with that.
I enjoy a sample for bonding time. I don't feel like JD's taking us anywhere for bonding time, honestly. Like, I'm kind of offended at this point.
Yeah.
He's taking me somewhere. You just gotta find him where he is.
I don't have the luxury of doing that. I'm on the wrong coast.
All right, I'll meet you in Vegas this weekend. Let's hang.
Listen. I live in Florida, bro.
You know, I've been listening to these podcasts and I've been getting the wrong message here.
Yeah, I will be going on vacation to Vegas in July for a week, so I'll meet you guys there.
July. Okay.
Yeah, y'all want to come through?
You're not going, Svet? Why? Not?
No, because I don't have enough clinic days to get off during that time. Yeah,
nice.
4th-year rotations, guys.
What, you should have just had a rotation in Vegas. It would have saved us so much time.
Honestly, I totally could have. But they don't have rotations in Vegas. They have Reno.
Reno's like 5 hours away. JD, why don't you bring us into the podcast topic for today?
I'd be honored to.
Okay.
Good to see you all. Welcome back. How are we all doing today?
But today we're talking about when to speak up. And, there are many instances when, it's necessary to say your piece. Sometimes as new grads, as optometry students, that's cool. Okay, but as all of these things, we sometimes get stepped over and kind of like stomped on by peers or elders or people who are kind of above us just because we don't want to get in trouble. We don't want to get failed for the day or things like that. So let's first talk about school, if you guys can bring it back and remember those times. Since you're in school, Svet, why don't you start? Is there ever been a time where you felt like you had to speak up for yourself?
Yes, I'm thinking of something that one of my attendings told me in 3rd year as like a warning about speaking up in 4th year. She told me during my evaluation, you're doing great in clinic, and 4th year you're going to do great as well. Make sure that you speak up for your education, where if you see something on the cornea and you don't know what it is, and your attending is just going to come and do the DFE, like ask them to look at the cornea so you can learn about it. Like speak up for your education. So I think that's something that I'm actively doing right now in 4th year, where it's like I know my attending is just gonna look at the nerve and not do a DFE, or just do like the BIO part and then not look at the nerve, and I'll be like, oh, can you like take a look at this, or take a look at the lens, and like how would you grade this cataract, and asking questions like that to speak up for my education. But that's one example. I know that we're talking about other ways of speaking up. I think Nadia can talk about speaking up maybe at work.
But wait, real quick before we move on, I have a question because when did you realize you had to do that, or it was necessary to do that, or important for you to do that?
I found it important because I've had experiences where the attending just comes in, does a quick DFE, or quickly looks at the nerve, and then will leave. And then the next student will grab the attending, and you kind of get no feedback on, oh, did you like my assessment and plan, or was I correct to have them come back in 6 months, 3 months, you know? So I think I always go and ask again so that I'm learning, and I want to hear what my attending would have done. Because if I say, if I tell the patient come back in 6 months, my attending would be like, oh, I would have said 3. And I'd be like, oh, but why? You know? So that's it. That's how it started.
Okay, makes sense. And going over back to Nadia, what were you going to say about the work experience?
Oh, yeah. I mean, if you deserve a raise, you should ask for a raise. If you want more time with patients, you should ask for more time with patients. If you need extra help with like, hey, like Friday afternoons, I really need to call in for my scleral lenses, or I really need this time to go over my OCT findings for the week that I didn't get to do, because sometimes we'll do them on like extra testing days and I have to review them and I don't have the time. Those are things that like in the workplace sometimes you have to ask for, and I feel like sometimes it's a struggle, because at first I was known as more of like a complainer. They were like, you're just complaining a lot, and I'm like, well, like I'm not complaining a lot. I'm trying to be the best doctor I can for this practice, and like I need certain things, and like I know this is how it's been, but like that's not the way that I think it should run, and like we need to find a compromise, obviously, right? So
Right.
just like having that conversation and just opening it up, and I was like, I know it seems like I'm complaining, but it's because maybe some things need to change. Like you've had a doctor here that's kind of been status quo and they've just kind of gone with the flow, but like maybe internally hasn't said anything because they are afraid to speak up a little bit, just more like different personality wise, like a little more timid than me. Kind of just like, that's how it is, that's how it works. But like now that I've been in the practice, she's become a little more like vocal as well, because she's seen me be like, hey, that's wrong, or can we change this? And like, even though it might not happen at first, the squeaky wheel gets the oil, and if you say it a few times, they're like, okay. And if a couple people say it, then like they're like, okay, maybe we do need to put something in the works. And then they think about it, and sometimes it changes and sometimes it doesn't change. Sometimes they don't prioritize it, but at least like you said it and you're working towards like making your work environment better, because it's important. You're at work more than you're at home sometimes, sometimes your work families, your people that you see more than you see your spouse or friends or whoever, so just important to speak your mind, speak up.
These are very good things that you bring up, but you said the squeaky wheel gets the oil. How do you address the oil that's necessary for that squeaky wheel? Like, how do you bring these things up?
So, I approach it like more casually, because I feel like confrontation throws people in power off. Being like, hey, can we set up a meeting? Like they're like, oh, a whole meeting, okay. But like, if I can catch somebody like at the end of the day, or if I can catch the main doctor, I'll be like, hey, I was looking over the charts and you changed this like thing in the chart. Like, I don't really like that. Can we go back to the old ways? Like, I don't know how the other doctors feel. Maybe we can start a conversation about it. Or I don't remember what else we've talked about lately. Like, we really tried to talk about like, hey, setting time aside, like in the morning, like I said, like an hour so I can call, because sometimes it's so busy that I can't call like my CRT patients for the week or my scleral patients. And then they're waiting like 3 weeks because I haven't even had time to call the parameters in, you know? Like, I just need an hour. Like, I would come in on my day off and I was like, I shouldn't be here. Like, I can have like 15 minutes at the beginning of the day where you guys can just block my one slot for the morning and I can get that done, you know? So just like approaching things more casually is what I would do. But if you're, you know, your bosses, I know you have to like find out what the relationship is, right? Sometimes they need to throw a meeting on the books and you're like, hey, can we grab lunch real quick? Like, do you have time in the afternoon? I just want to talk about some things. Or, hey, like me and such doctor want to talk to you about, like, if you're in a practice together, like about a couple things, like, can we meet at lunch? We have like monthly meetings. Sometimes we don't do them or like they're like focused on a topic, but usually at those meetings we'll bring up stuff. So if your practice has like their own like, hey, once a month doctors meeting, that's like a good time to bring it up, or a staff meeting or whatever too.
Nice. Okay, JD, what about you? What are some ways you feel you can bring up a situation if you feel the need to speak up, like any of those things, or even let's talk about asking for a raise, since you brought that up as an example.
I think in terms of speaking up when that comes to mind, and you're saying how to go about that, like in a work or professional setting, I do agree. Like with Nadia, having meetings is very helpful. So if it comes to asking a raise or something so precious like that, one thing my uncle taught me was to kind of talk about it outside the workplace. So usually like taking someone outside to like dinner, so you can kind of like take your mind off of work and get to know each other and talk to each other better in like a casual or like personal level, and then kind of bring it up. So for example, for me, when it comes to asking a raise, at 1 year into my job, I went to some Sloppy Joe's place where they had like Sloppy Joe sandwiches. You know, we were just talking to my boss, like just making jokes, and then you know intentionally brought up like, hey, how do you think how things have gone after a year? And of course, no one's gonna say anything bad to you, right? You're in a casual, comfortable environment, and so everybody's really positive. And then when you ask for a raise, it's just a little bit more positive spirits because you're outside of work and talk about happy, funny things. When things come up on the daily, though, I think it's always helpful to have like a weekly meeting or so some sort of like system. So currently, I have like a weekly call. Previously, I had like a biweekly lunch. I think having that constant communication is really helpful. So because things will always continually come up. But I also think it's casual, just to, like Nadia saying, hey, shoot a text or send a message, say, hey, can we have a conversation about something that I think can be improved. It's always like that funny line when you start off at school, or when you start off and you start working, you're probably too shy and too timid. You're like, oh, okay, like thank you, like you told me to take my shoes off the door. I respect it. It's your house, like I get it. And then you probably get too comfortable. I know I definitely did. Where you demand certain things, and you start telling like, hey, I want the computer on this side or there, and then you kind of find you got to try to find that happy medium and how to communicate to other people. So that's kind of been some of the process for me.
Okay. That's cool. And so you brought up taking out this boss to Sloppy Joe or Sloppy Joe's or whatever. Was it like how did you approach that though? Like was it a one-on-one meeting? Was it a group like, hey, let's all go? Like how did you approach that instance? Like the people
Definitely
need to know. How do you do this?
Yeah. How to ask for a raise? Okay, I wouldn't do it in a group meeting because no, your CEO is not going to want to talk about numbers or other people's numbers in front of other people. So if you want to ask for something like that, I would keep it one-on-one. I would definitely take it outside of work. I would definitely try to start by just talking about personal life stuff, you know. And every CEO or every good boss is going to want to keep you there, right? So they're going to say flowery things to you, and then you just reciprocate and mirror back and say flowery things to them. And then you say, hey, since things have gone so well over 1 year, you know, do you think we've reached success? What do you think would get us to reach success? And then you say, hey, look, I have done these things. I was wondering, I feel like a raise might be helpful and something that continues to push me to be better. What are your thoughts on that? And then you sit there silently and you see what the other person says. Obviously, they may take some time to think about it. In my situation, I was asked, how much do you want? So that's like an entry to just saying a percentage or a number. So you have to be prepared to hear that response as well. But I think no one's going to be in a foul mood if you ask for a raise. I think the question where the foul mood comes is if you haven't provided the evidence over your year, or if you ask it inappropriately, or if you ask something too inappropriate.
Speaking of inappropriate, it's like how much is too much, right? Like, how do you know the perfect amount to like say when you're just thrown on the spot like that?
All right, Mike's coming off. So I asked for 15%, and I got laughed at. 15%.
Percent of sale, like revenue and sales.
15% of my salary. I wanted a raise.
Oh, 15% increase.
Yeah, so I had no idea what to ask, but I was like, 15 sounds like a good number, so I'm gonna ask for 15, and I got laughed at.
Yeah, 15's a lot, bro.
I was enthusiastic first year worker there, and I admit, I definitely did not mean malintent, but I also think how you come off to your employee is important too. Like if that number's too high, you gotta let the employee understand that too. So I think if I had to do it over again, I probably wouldn't throw out a number. I would say, hey, I'd like to hear what your thoughts are. As we established, I have had success here. I'd like to hear what your thoughts on a raise would be. Now that we established a raise would make sense for us. And then have them say a number, which you can always counter to depending on whatever, if it's too low. You don't want to give yourself a ceiling. That's what I would say. What if he offered me 20%, right? Like let him start off. If he says 5, I'm just going to say higher if I want to say higher. Let him throw out a number.
I'm thinking back to before optometry school. I was a general manager of a national vision inside of Walmart, but when they told me I'm hired, they like told me the compensation, and I felt like it was kind of low, but I didn't really counter it. Like I didn't know how to do that at that time. So I'm just trying to say I wish we had this podcast then, so then I could have known how to navigate it at that time. You know what I mean?
I think you could do the sandwich method. The sandwich method is where you say something nice, say what you want, or something mean, and then sandwich it with something nice. So you can say, hey, that was such a nice offer. However, I was wondering if there's any flexibility with increasing it to 17%. Thank you again for the offer. I'm really looking forward to potentially working together. That's a potential strategy, the sandwich method. I think you always want to establish like something in the beginning, like, hey, you've done a great job, you've done really nice. Like make sure it's like flattery, make sure it's super nice. Make sure like you're still showing that intent. I want to be there longer, because you want them to keep chasing you. You want them to think, hey, this is the person for me, right? Kind of, you gotta use like dating parallel kind of thing. And then say your request and make sure you have some thought process behind it. Of course, don't just throw out. If you say something too outrageous, no one's gonna take you seriously, which is what happened to me.
I think when you're trying to negotiate, I know we talked about doing our negotiating pod, but you have to say why you're worth the raise. Like you have to be like, hey, when I was like trying to negotiate my salary fresh out of school, I was like, hey, like I've done these rotations and these like IHS places, the VA, like I'm really good at disease, and I know that your strengths are like refractions and you don't do a lot of medical visits, but that's what I can bring to the practice, a fresh kind of like take. And then I said all the reasons why like I deserve more, I guess. And I think that's important, just to like highlight the reasons why, like this is how much revenue I bring in, or like the patients really like me, here's a list of all my reviews from like the year, or whatever it is. And it's like hey, I always get this amount of people to buy glasses, or I am bringing in this much medical, or I'm more comfortable doing sclerals. I'm doing this many sclerals now, which is bringing revenue into the practice. Like basically like saying why you're worth getting a raise, or why like your value is worth more. And then they like are like, oh yeah, like do I want to lose you or don't I want to lose you? Like you're right, like yeah, you see this many patients, yeah, you're bringing this into the practice, yeah, you're valued here as a doctor, and I like, is it worth me giving you that like 5% raise in this year, or is it worth me like starting over and trying my luck with somebody new that I don't know, that my patients aren't comfortable with,
Mm-hmm.
That's a good point. If someone's going to pay you more, you got to show why they're going to pay you more.
Right. And it seems like these methods can be utilized even in like interview, when you're getting interviewed, like for a job, for your first job, if you're fresh out of optometry school. So that brings me to something. Svet, I want to put you on the spot.
Wait, I have a question for Nadia.
Okay.
Oh, okay.
Nadia, what was the percentage of how much you negotiated? So they said one number. How much higher did you negotiate?
So, I mean, I'll tell you guys the numbers. I don't mind. I think we should talk about numbers because it helps us all as an industry. When I first started out in school, the offer was like 135 or something. And I was like, okay, well, I want like, I kind of like did higher because I was like, oh, let me just like do more. And then if she comes back and says like this much, then, you know, we kind of meet in the middle. So then I said 145 and she's like, okay. I was like, okay, like no negotiation. So I was like, all right. But there was other things like I had to pay my own healthcare. There was like other things that were like not part of it, you know? So I was like, I gave her a list. I was like, well, you're not paying for my healthcare. You know, I'm going to be here like Saturdays. Like, you know, that's a valuable time for optometrists to be working. I was like, oh, I have to, you're not offering me like a 401k. Like I have to do that on my own. So I gave her a list of like why I needed the more amount, I guess. And then she was like, okay, I see what you're saying. Like, fine, kind of thing.
Awesome. Okay, so what I was gonna say is, Sweat, we're gonna put you on the spot. Since you are getting ready to apply to residencies, right? Let's do an interview session and tell us why you should, like, first off, what type of residency, why you think you're a good candidate, and what are you gonna do to better our practice. And
That's really hard for me because I don't know what residency I want to do yet.
just
Make
all
up
right,
one.
let's make up.
I have two. I have two residencies that I'm
Okay.
possibly interested in. So I won't do
Alright.
either of those. I'll do a residency that I'm actually not interested in. I'll do low vision because I don't want to do low vision. But for
Okay.
this scenario, I want to do low vision. So, let me think. Okay. My name is Svetlana, and I want to join your practice because I know that you guys mainly, you guys need somebody just like me. So you guys mainly do a lot of basic eye exams where you don't dilate a lot of your patients, and you're doing a lot of glasses, contact lenses, and I know you get mainly majority of your income through luxury glasses sales. I think that you need somebody like me looking at the demographics of the city. There's a lot of patients who need low vision services, and that's something that I can bring to your practice, a low vision specialty clinic. What would be different is that I will be helping the patients with their specialty magnifiers and glasses with tints. And that's something that you guys don't have a selection here for, and not a lot of practices have a selection for. And for that, let's say they already gave me a price. So they set some kind of like price to hire me, and then I would be like, and with all of that, I think I would want this number instead for everything that I will be providing to your practice.
JD, what do you think? How'd that go?
You know, this is a hard thing to do on the spot, and
mic's coming off.
It's so hard to do on the spot.
yeah.
I'm ready. I want to be on the spot.
We'll put you on the spot. It seems like we're doing a little carousel here. I think I like her like strategy. She was trying to show what the needs were, what value she brings, and then shows what she believes her value is, which I think is a great formula. I think I would probably be more specific with certain things, or like maybe, you know, for low vision practice, like what their needs are. So, you know, maybe selling tints and stuff like that is important, but like, I guess, you know, what your background is and how you would be better suited for the position. Maybe I've seen a lot of these patients, I'm more passionate, I did some research, or like I can see X amount of patients, like some tangible things like that I think would be more helpful. But I think your formula was great overall.
Yeah.
See, I think the passion didn't come out because I'm not passionate about low vision.
Right, which is like, I don't know why you picked that, but like you're like, We can get you some lenses.
Some tints, you know.
Yeah, exactly. I think your point is like when you're talking about these things, whether you're speaking up to, like, to your staff or you're negotiating, there has to be some energy there, some passion. Like you're gonna buy it more if you see the person's genuine about it, and in this case, there could have been a little bit more.
Yeah. Okay, Nadia, you ready to be put on the spot? Okay, so
Should I hold my mic?
for you, you're interviewing for the biggest dry eye clinic in your state.
I'm ready. Beverly Hills
okay.
Eye Doc. What is the dry eye clinic? You know, Dr. Solani.
Dr.
Dr. Solani, I'm ready to be hired.
Okay, let us know why, what you can bring to the table. Why should we hire you?
Sure, of course. I mean, I am so glad to have this interview today. Thank you so much for meeting with me. I love your practice. I've been by it every single day for a month. I just come by and just look at it because this is just truly my dream to be working with you and your patients and your staff. And you've built such an incredible practice here. It would be an honor to be part of it. In fact, I've spent my last year in practice really cultivating and learning as much as I can about dry eyes and the new technologies that come with it. And I think that, you know, we would be such a good team together. I feel like your community and this community could really benefit from us working together as a team. I am bilingual. I can speak Farsi. You know, this community has a lot of Persians and a lot of Farsi speakers. I'm also, you know, a woman who will make other women comfortable. Sometimes, you know, that it takes a woman's touch to help a practice grow and be a little bit more motherly. And I feel like I could definitely bring that into the practice. I also am very involved in the optometry community. So, you know, I have a very popular Instagram page where I'm able to connect with a lot of colleagues, and I have really worked hard to cultivate that niche of the industry to make myself well known, and that will bring recognition to your practice as well as far as marketing and strategically getting our practice to grow together. And I really think that this would cohesively work wonderfully. And so I think that I would learn from you and you would learn from me, and I think that that would be a great and wonderful relationship.
Well, you said you stop by every day. What exactly do you do when you come by?
Yeah, I eat lunch across the street because my favorite Chick-fil-A is right here. And so I will eat my Chick-fil-A sandwich and watch all of your beautiful patients walking in.
You watch our patients. Oh. Security?
I believe in the power of manifesting. Do you believe, sir, in the power of manifestations?
Yes, but I don't believe in the power of stalking. And it sounds like you've been doing that every day.
Doesn't make two of us because, you know, sometimes you got to speak up.
Spud, what'd you think about her delivery and approach?
I honestly thought it was pretty great. She sounded confident, calm. She wasn't, it wasn't overwhelming. You know, it wasn't like, oh my gosh, you just tell me a bunch of BS. Like, it was like, wow, this sounds really genuine, and I believe that she'll be able to do this.
Awesome. I mean, it was, yeah, I agree. I think you definitely sounded confident, even in your BS, talking about motherly. I don't think you have any kids, but you still delivered that, and like it would have flown over my head if I didn't really know you.
I have a fiance who is a child sometimes, so.
Okay, you said it, we didn't. I'm just kidding.
Just saying.
I think those are two very great approaches, and we're not using that to compare at all, but you know, we just want to have a little fun with that. So, does anyone else want to bring anything up before we wrap today?
Oh, wow.
I mean, speaking up can happen in so many ways. We kind of took it to like the contract negotiation stuff, which I love. So I love that I went that way. But there's like even speaking up with staff or speaking up with, you know, other patients, however you want to put it. I mean, I think the best way with all this stuff is getting to know who your audience is and how they're receptive. So if some of my staff is not receptive to screaming, maybe they're more calm, and some staff is more receptive to direct. So just kind of know who you're talking to, what their goals are, and how you can calmly reach your goals together.
Real quick, I want to talk about another part of speaking up, and it's really advocating for our profession as well. So, as a community, especially with all that stuff that went down in Florida last year, where it was like the "Don't call me doctor" or "Can't call you doctor" bill, or whatever it was.
You'd have to change your Instagram name. It would just say "I am Nadia."
Yeah, it used to be that. So, it's still reserved just in case, but for the most part, like just being able to speak up about like the rights and the things for the profession in general, and the rights of like diversity growing in the industry and in our profession and in optometry, and making sure that we speak up for women's equality and all that stuff, like equal pay and all those things. Like being timid doesn't get you anywhere. Like I said, the squeaky wheel gets the oil. And so just being able to know, like, hey, like we need to meet as groups of optometrists so that we know that we need to speak up to legislation and the Senate and in our local communities even, and being able to speak up for our communities, as minorities especially, those kinds of speaking up are also important.
So yes, guys, it is very important to speak up. Did you want to have a last takeaway, Svet?
Yeah. My last takeaway is that I think we talked a lot about different ways you can speak, or different situations where you can speak up, but I just want to give a quick 2 cents or advice for those who find it difficult to speak up. I think planning what you're going to say is a big help, especially when you like write down the main topics you want to hit. And then I would also go to a friend and confide in someone who you can ask, hey, does this sound confident, or is this everything that I should say, or I never speak up, so now I really want to speak up, but is it going to come off rude? I would take all of that into consideration. And then ultimately, if you don't speak up for yourself, no one else will. And that can apply to so many different things. So you should believe in yourself and speak up, even though it's really hard. Because if you can't speak up for yourself at work, I'm assuming you can't speak up for yourself in other areas in life. So I think if you start at work, it'll be easier to speak up for yourself in other places in your life too.
Svet, is your mic on?
It is on. I think I'm just really tired. I can bring it closer. Did you not hear me?
I did, but you're so quiet.
Oh, I'm really tired.
Usually your mic is
No,
so
you sound
loud.
good. You're fine.
Oh, okay.
What about you, Doug?
Yeah, Doug.
Speak up.
I think we definitely went through a lot of situations and ways in which it's necessary to speak up. And yeah, I think it's important to do so, because if you don't, people are gonna walk all over you. So you got to stand up for yourself, stand up for what's right, and even if you feel like it's hard for yourself to speak up, like maybe talk to somebody, maybe one of your friends who has a bigger voice. Just get help in terms of doing so if you feel like you can't. But I feel like everyone here had great takeaways, in which I think will be very helpful in trying to speak up. So enjoy the pod. I hope you guys enjoyed the pod today. Adios.
Hey guys, thanks for listening to the Depth Perception Podcast. Don't forget to like and subscribe on all of our platforms, including
Spotify,
Instagram,
Google Podcasts,
Apple Podcast,
YouTube. Make sure you click that button. Double tap that.
So you guys have no reason not to follow us and tune in to the next episode.
Stop wasting time.
Get in depth.
Subscribe.